What's up guys, it's me Jeremy. So today I'm bringing you guys some of the more interesting and exciting gameplay interactions with Camille that I noticed when I just, was playing her on the PB, and just kind of a couple things that I picked up from some forum posts here and there, and just a bunch of fun stuff that I thought was pretty interesting. So we're starting this video off with her wall jumps, and Camille of course can jump through walls. As you saw right there, she can jump through walls all by herself, doesn't need any assistance. And after testing it out and trying to figure out, which walls she could jump through, which walls she couldn't jump through, it actually turns out that Camille can jump through like potentially more walls than any character in the entire game actually. Now you notice that with Kog'Maw you get the range boost because you get the range boost on the second part of the dash when you're using the jumps. So when you have an enemy champion, you can actually jump some crazy walls. Not that one, but there are actually quite a few like really large walls that you can jump with Camille, even by herself. Like that wall at the Wraith's Bush is pretty large, honestly. You can't jump that wall there, can't jump that one either though, but you can pull off some pretty long distance stuff when you have an enemy champion to work with. Now, in an actual game scenario, I'm not sure how realistic it is to have an enemy champion caught at the edge of a wall like that. So even though, you can make some really long jumps, not that one though, you can definitely do some interesting stuff. Now this jump here that I'm going to show off is something that I think is a little bit more realistic. Maybe you're coming down bot lane for a gank or something like that. This jump is one that I could definitely see being used in an actual game, because man, look at that distance. That was just such a large jump. Like, it's honestly crazy. Like, is there any character that can really jump through that wall? Anyway, the next thing we're testing is the flash interaction with her E, trying to figure out, how it works exactly. Turns out it works pretty much exactly like you would expect from a Gragas body slam. So let's take a look at that one again, just in case for those of you guys who missed it. So it does look, pretty similar to the Gragas body slam. You can flash to change the direction, and it's just going to hit the stuff that happens to be in the radius. The second cast on the E does have like an area of effect sort of radius, so it does work quite nicely, and it should be pretty easy to land, so you can either extend the range or change the direction or just make sure you guarantee landing it. Next thing we're taking a look at is the buffering with her W and her E combined. So you saw there, casting the W first and then casting the E second, definitely works there. The second version is casting the E first and then the W second, so that version works as well. And as a result, turns out buffering her W actually turns out that it works quite well and should definitely be a very effective mechanic to make use of. Now the next thing we're talking about is actually some interactions and just the way her passive works. So the way her passive decides which shield to use, essentially it looks at the magical and physical damage that the enemy champion has dealt over the course of the game, and then compares that to her defensives, and then gives her what's statistically the most effective shield. But it definitely does take her defenses into account. So versus hybrid champions, you might get a shield based on which resistance you just happen to have less of. And so in the early game, because of the way it's designed, you can definitely get a physical shield from, say, a mage at level 1 like you did with the Azir, as you see in the clip, and then an AP shield later on in the game. So it's very dynamic and it scales very well, and it's awesome. So the next interaction we're taking a look at is something involving Tahm Kench's W and if it can transfer allies. So it turns out that Tahm Kench's W can actually take allies outside of the Camille ultimate when they're trapped in. This is something that I thought was kind of interesting, because it's actually one of the only ways I found that you can make an ally leave a Camille ultimate. But there's also another interesting quirk to it. So if Tahm Kench grabs the person out of the ultimate and spits them out before the ultimate runs out, they actually get teleported back to the radius of the ultimate. So if you get Camille ulted and Tahm Kench eats you, make sure you wait for the Camille ultimate to run out, otherwise you get teleported back, and that's not going to be good news for you, that's for sure. The next thing was one that I thought was really cool, is an Azir interaction. So you can actually bounce off of Azir's wall without getting hit by it, something that I thought was really cool. But at the same time, it causes you to potentially still get hit by it based on the angle that you approach the wall. So you saw there I used a spell shield to go through Azir's wall, but because the spell shield procced, that means I would have gotten hit by it. And of course, the next ones are actually really quick. It's just Anivia's wall. As expected, you can bounce off of Anivia's wall, and as well you can also bounce through it. The next one I wanted to test out is interactions with teleport. So casting Camille's ultimate will cancel a teleport that is currently being channeled, something that was pretty expected, but the more interesting thing to consider is that if you cast Camille's ultimate first and then start channeling a teleport, the teleport actually does not get cancelled. And since Camille's ultimate lasts for 4 seconds and the teleport channel is 4.5 seconds, the teleport will pretty much always go off actually, so potentially a way to an escape if you're a top laner laning against Camille. Now the next thing is, just wanted to test like pushback abilities and stuff. So if you're playing like Tristana, Janna, Alistar, whoever, and you get ulted by Camille or a teammate does, you can just push Camille out of the ultimate, and because of the way the ultimate works, whenever Camille leaves the radius, the ultimate goes down, so it works exactly as you would expect it to. The next thing I wanted to test is Malphite's ultimate to see if, how does it work with abilities that are a dash, but a dash that's supposed to be like unstoppable, like Malphite's ultimate, Vi's ultimate, stuff like that. And it turns out it causes Malphite to do this sort of like weird slow motion animation kind of thing and end up at the radius of the ultimate. So in this clip, the Malphite ultimate was of course casted outside of the ultimate radius, and it just ends up with him ulting right on the edge of the box. So the next thing I wanted to test was Ryze's ultimate, and now this one was pretty interesting because it kind of had somewhat of a similar interaction to teleport. If Ryze starts casting his ultimate and Camille ults him, it's going to cancel the ultimate right there. But at the same time, if you ult him and then you cast the ultimate, Ryze can actually teleport, but if the ultimate is still up, Ryze only teleports to the edge of Camille's ultimate. And in the third unique scenario, we have Ryze casting his ultimate in a situation where Camille's ultimate runs out first, and he actually gets the full teleport off. Next thing I wanted to see was Echo's ultimate to test untargetable movement, so stuff like Maokai's W, Fizz's E, things that would make you untargetable but also have a gap closer or some kind of movement effect, and it turns out that he gets teleported or stuck on the very edge of the Camille ultimate. So despite the untargetable nature, the untargetable invulnerability effect that the ultimate brings, it's not enough to get him outside of the Camille death trap. So in our next interaction, I wanted to test out passives that do stuff when you die and see how that kind of interacts with the ultimate, Kog'Maw's passive. So it doesn't actually trap you inside, you're free to move around outside of the box or wherever. As soon as you die, the ultimate just goes away instantly. Kind of what I expected, I guess, but definitely still cool to make note of. And the next thing I wanted to take a look at is how the box interacts with clones. And there were 2 Shaco interactions that I thought were interesting. So first off, of course, as you see there, the Shaco clone can leave the box. It's not affected by the boundaries whatsoever, and the actual champion Shaco is still trapped inside. On the other hand though, if you as the Camille player use your ultimate on the clone, the Shaco player actually has the kind of reverse interaction. The Shaco player is able to leave the box, leave the ultimate, and they don't get trapped in or anything, as you can see in that clip there. So in our next clip, it was something a little similar, but with pets, like summonable units. I wanted to see how the box would work with that. So we've got an Annie with her ultimate there. So I pop my ultimate on the Annie player, and Annie uses her ultimate, and it turns out Tibbers is able to run freely. It would work the same with stuff like Ivern's ultimate and Malzahar's W. They're just free to move around, not affected by the box in any way whatsoever. And the next thing that we're testing is Spell Shield. So there were 2 interactions that I wanted to test with Spell Shields. The first one is just what happens if you Spell Shield the ultimate straight up, and of course it's just going to block it perfectly. Very nice play there, just an easy block, pretty much kind of what you would expect, but definitely a powerful tool to make use of. The second thing I wanted to see is if using a Spell Shield would allow you to exit the box. So Sivir pops her Spell Shield, tries to walk out, she's not allowed to, you shall not pass, so the Spell Shield does not help her leave the box. But overall, that's actually going to wrap it up for this video. Those were just some of the really cool and interesting interactions that I was able to come up with Camille. I thought they were pretty cool, so I wanted to just test them out, see how they worked. And overall, I had a lot of fun making this video, so I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, feel free to hit that like button, subscribe if you want. Thank you so much for watching, and of course, as always, I'll see you guys next time.